films, how a woman could be in a modern age. And I really wanted to write about that, but I never could find sort of a way in. So a couple of years ago, I was curating a photo exhibit for Staley Wide's gallery down in Soho. And it was an exhibit of Greta Garbo portraits that were done by the photographers at the studio. And it was really sort of the life cycle of her filmmaking career. And Ethelene Staley asked me to do some remarks at the opening. And so I wanted to talk about the photographers, and I kind of went into full research mode. I knew a little bit about how important these photographs were, and I knew a little bit about each of the photographers. But the one that I just was so captivated by was the very first photographer that she worked with. Her name was Ruth Harriet Louise. She was born Ruth Harriet Goldstein. She grew up in New Jersey. Her father was a rabbi, and somehow she acquired this amazing photography skill, and she worked with Nicholas Marai, who's a very notable photographer. So at the age of 22, she already had a pretty robust resume of theater and creativity and photography. And I'm going to ask, so when I started researching her, I found these old newspaper articles about her family in New Brunswick, and I'll have Max put up the first article. He's going to load that into the.
He's there. There it is.
Yeah, there it is. So if you see, this is Miss Goldstein, the daughter of the rabbi, and there's some notes about what an interesting family the Goldstein family was. And the people wrote about this in newspapers and who they invited for dinner and things like that. And then the next PDF that I uncovered was she would create these little plays. They would write these plays in 1924 and produce them at the sort of Jewish version of the YMCA in New Brunswick. And when I discovered that, I was just like so incredibly thrilled, because my family, my father's family, is from New Brunswick. And I'm sure my grandparents probably attended these plays, which is just incredible. So I kind of dug deeper and got to know a little bit more about her. And there's one more insert where, well, yeah, that's from the program. And then Max, if you put up the next one, we have an article on the top left corner, and it says, local young women will photograph movie stars. So in 1924, thank you, Max. In 1924, Ruth Harriet Louise her age is 22. She goes out to Los Angeles, and she quickly becomes the only portrait photographer at the brand new MGM Studios. And this is a position of great responsibility, because these photographs were so key to the whole marketing effort of films. Not even a year later, Greta Garbo arrives from Sweden, and the two of them are put together to create sort of what will become the iconography of Garbo. And I just found it fascinating that she's 22, Garbo's 19. They're both far away from their homes. They spend hours and hours and hours in this cramped studio on the third floor of like the dressing room of MGM, the dressing room building of MGM, creating these photographs. And I just sort of thought, well, what were they talking? You know, these are young girls. Today they'd be interns, but they were in charge. And what did they talk about? Did they gossip? Did they talk about boys? Did they fall in love with each other? You know, what was it? And so I kind of created this sort of fictional imagined, speculative plot of what was it like for those two women to be in Hollywood together. So that was sort of the roots of the play. And as I wrote the play, it turned into sort of a woman's anthem. These young women, as many women in Hollywood did in the play, encounter, they have their Me Too moments, they have their power struggles, their challenges with deciding how or if they can follow their artistic dreams. There's a lot of conflict, and at the end, it's a story that felt really modern and really contemporary. And because it was sort of my women's anthem, I decided I really want this to be a musical. And I looked at, I tried to figure out how can I find a collaborator, and through some incredible serendipity, a young woman named Kelly Glenn was introduced to me, and then I met with Sammy and Amanda, and we should talk about what that was like.
Yeah, tell me about it. How did you become collaborators? So Kelly introduced the three of you together, and then what happened from there? I mean, did you meet at a Starbucks, or what was it?
It was a little cuter than that. So Kelly Glenn, she produced our off-Broadway musical Single Rider, and she's a very good friend of ours. And she brought us out to like margaritas or something. She's like, I've got a gig for you. And we're like, tell us more. And she kind of explained a little bit. She's like, this lovely lady from Rhode Island is writing a play about Greta Garbo, and she's looking for specifically like female composers and lyricists. And we're like, let's make this happen. So then we arranged for a meeting in like September of 2018, right, Sammy?
Yeah, I think it was September of 2018. And we had just come off of closing our off-Broadway show, and then kind of written another show pretty quickly after that. So Amanda and I were sort of in like prime writing mode. We've been
really were
being together every day. So we were like, okay, perfect. Let's just like bring Gray into our workspace, which is in my apartment, and just like show her what we do. Let's just like make this a work session, and we'll kind of bring her in. And we got snacks, and we invited Gray to my tiny studio apartment in New York City. And we were like, okay, let's just chat about the piece. And we both read the piece and really responded to it. And as Gray was saying, I think what's so amazing about it is that although it's set in the 1920s, the themes are so contemporary. A lot of these women are dealing with a lot of the same issues women are dealing with today. And it's also really about owning your place as a woman in the working world, in society, and being able to follow your dreams, really, and what that means. And we decided the theme of the show really is, what is the price of following your dreams as a woman? What is the cost? So we ended up meeting with Gray at my apartment, and kind of what we decided to do was write a song on the spot. And we all talked about it, and we just decided, okay, this is how we're going to win her over. We're going to show her how quickly we can write a song that will work well for the musical. So Gray, do you want to take it from here?
Well, so they sit down and they have this shorthand. I mean, it was almost like you didn't really talk as much together. There was sort of this knowledge about how you all work. I find that fascinating. It was almost like two bodies, one head. And Amanda came up with a lyric, Magnificent Someday. You just said, I feel like that's a lyric for, and we were writing the song that Garbo sings. And I think that was sort of the cornerstone. And then Amanda started playing the piano. And I'm telling you, within 20 minutes, you had a melody and an awesome lyric. And I did, I listened to it, and I literally started crying. I mean, there were tears, because I suddenly thought, oh gosh, my dream that I really thought would never come true, that I could make this a musical, it's possible. And I actually found the right people. to work with, because not only are they're lovely and they were so talented, but they also responded, even though they didn't know that much about like old Hollywood and movies. And now you guys are practically experts, but back then they didn't understand that, but they responded to the human qualities of all the characters and the drama. And it felt very much like what they were going through in their young lives as artists. And I kind of dawned on me like, oh, these collaborators are the same ages as my characters, and they're sort of pursuing similar dreams. So it's just like, it just felt so perfect.
Cool, serendipitous, right?
Yeah.
I would love to, if we could just, not to totally go off on a tangent, but Amanda and Sammy, we don't really know either of you very well. I would love to hear about like how many times you've collaborated in the past. What is this working relationship like when you're writing a song or a whole musical? I mean, what is it like to be collaborating like that? And can you tell us a little bit about your previous history together?
Sure. So Sammy and we met at the BMI Lehman Angle Musical Theater Workshop in New York City, and it's like the premier stop for composers and lyricists and book writers that are, Broadway bound. I mean, all the good guys come out of there. You got, Alan Menken, Richard Maltby, the Anderson Lopez's,
Oh, sure.
All the big guys.
Okay.
All the guys that have Tonys on their walls, they went to BMI,
That's where I
right?
found them.
So,
Cool.
Sammy and I were both lucky enough to, get into that program. And me being in there as a composer, me and her being in there as a lyricist, it was only kind of a matter of time before we were going to get paired together. It wasn't guaranteed because there was about 30 people in the program, but I had my fingers crossed because Sammy was very, very good. And I thought she was too cool for me. But go ahead, Sammy, you tell the rest.
We luckily got paired actually for the very last project of the first year. The first year they pair you with different people every like 4 weeks. You're kind of paired with a new person just to sort of see who you jive with, to see who you have a really good collaboration with. And we got paired for the last project of the year, which was the 10-minute musical. So we had to write a full musical, start to finish, in 10 minutes, beginning, middle, and end. It could be an adaptation, it could be totally original. And I remember when we got paired, I was so excited. I was like, oh my God, I've been wanting to work with her. This is perfect. Like, this is the biggest project. We're gonna have a blast. And we met up at a bar in New York City and just started talking. And kind of by the end of that night, we decided what we wanted to work on together was an adaptation of Eloise at the Plaza for our 10-minute musical.
Oh, I love Eloise.
And Amanda still has the
the opening number. It's really cute.
Can we hear it? Can we hear this like first song?
There's
that
no
you guys
words.
put
There's
together?
no, because we never wrote it. We never wrote it because we knew we were going to
Oh.
get the, we contacted Simon and Schuster. They're like, hang up,
Oh.
But,
You're out there. We're the perfect people to write that show. We're ready.
yeah, so Eloise is like, she's like, running through the hotel. And then, yeah, no words again. So.
Oh, great.
So that's like the main theme that like takes her through, and then so like we had the theme, and then we're like, are we gonna get the rights? And we're like, nah. We're like, let's not. We had big ambitions. We were pretty
Sure.
ambitious right off the bat. We're like, if we're gonna adapt something, we want it to actually happen. So
Yeah, and I think
let's.
both of us have been very lucky too that in we're both pretty young, and for the amount of time we've been working, we've had a lot of success and had a lot of productions go up. And so
very
both
lucky.
of us came into this collaboration being like, okay, if we're gonna do this, like it's gonna end up being a full musical and it's gonna go to Broadway.
Oh,
And
yeah. Great.
and that's just kind of who we are, which is I think why we get along so well, because we're both blindly optimistic about the future.
Yeah.
And aggressively ambitious. Yeah.
But there's just so much positivity. It's yeah, it's great.
The very, very long story short, that ended up being Single Rider, the 10-minute musical we came up with, which we ended up adapting into a full show. And then it got picked up off Broadway and it ran for 8 weeks and it was amazing and so exciting and the coolest thing ever. So we were very lucky that happened when it did. Thinking about it now, and so many shows that have been not opened or have had to close because of this, it's like we just keep thanking our lucky stars that happened in 2018.
Yeah, and then from, we had such a fruitful collaboration with that show, and it really was a product of both of our imaginations, and we're like, we want to keep doing this. Like this works, this feels correct on so many levels, and we aesthetically are drawn to different things, but also the same thing. Like aesthetically, we're so different, but we come together and make something that is very much a very beautiful child, I think. So then, yeah, after Single Rider, we immediately picked up another project, and we brought on another collaborator. We're starting another comedic musical. So ever since 2018, we've had several balls in the air, collaborating on several projects. And I write with other people as well, but I think Sammy, I see her probably more than I see anyone else. Yeah.
Truly.
That's great.
And it's nice. And we're friends too. We're friends first. And I think that's what's really important, is that before we start every writing session, we'll like sit down and talk for half an hour to an hour about how we're doing, getting all that stuff out of the way. And I think it's just really important to have someone that you like to work with and actually like to talk to, because you spend so much time. Writing musicals like a marriage, like 10, 20 years.
We're married.
Yes, it's a long time.
It is a marriage. And I mean, I always say, like, Sammy knows where I am, at least like 97% of the time, because that's how, kind of in touch we are with everything. And, we're always sending each other things that could be interesting. And, yeah, it's a friendship. It's a marriage. It's a collaboration, and it's a constant back and forth.
That's
and,
beautiful.
and yeah, it's constantly working on it, just like any relationship, and growing with it. So it's been cool. It's been really excellent. And
Awesome.
I'm lucky.
So then this woman from Rhode Island comes to you with this Greta Garbo musical, and you guys have margaritas, and you all get along, and you go back to Sammy's studio apartment. And then what's the song? Then what do? You have one lyric and you write a musical?
So we had the book. The book was done.
Okay.
However, it's completely, it's never done, but it was to a point where, the whole story was told on paper. And I had written sort of like little poems with very specific, using very specific phrases and languages that of the era and of the characters, things I found in like fan magazines, or things I remember Garbo actually saying to me. And so those words were then, we'll show, actually, Max, can you show the lyrical suggestion, PDF number 6? So when I wrote the script,
Gorge.
number 6, there we go. So when I wrote the script, there were, this was the very, the inkling that I had of what Ruth Harriet might be singing about. And the song that we're going to showcase tonight is her want song. She wants to be a photographer. And so she's looking for permission to do that from her father, who's a very conservative rabbi.
Greg, can I interrupt just for 1 second?
Yeah.
You mentioned the want song, which I'm familiar with, and I think I've only heard that term used, or a lot of people, in terms of the Little Mermaid, where she's singing, look at this stuff, isn't this neat? Can you just explain to our audience what the want song, like what a want song in a musical is, and what the purpose of it is, please?
Sammy, I'm going to defer to you because you're good at this.
Sure, great. So in musical theater, I think what really the tenet is, the cornerstone of a good musical, is that your main character has a really strong want. And then basically we need to see them at the beginning. We need to know exactly what that want is. We need to see the obstacles against that want. And then we need to see them at the end either get what they want or get something different, right? Or get something different. And a lot of times what they'll call sort of the character establishment song, usually your main character will sing somewhere in the first structural
20 minutes.
First 20 minutes of the show. They kind of have to sing a song that is their I want song or I am song. And it's either what they want or it's their philosophy of life. We look at Part of Your World from The Little Mermaid. That's obviously a great example. We also have Cockeyed Optimist from South Pacific.
The Wizard and I from Wicked, everyone knows that, right? Like, what does she want? Yeah.
Somewhere Over the Rainbow is a character establishment song. So it's really
sure is.
right from the very beginning what the character's journey is going to be.
Excellent. Thank you for that.
So that might be a good segue into playing Katrina's song. So basically what happened was we started writing the music. I found my way to Josh, and he was very receptive to allowing us to schedule a reading in January. So we had a date on the calendar. I applied for a RISCA grant, and so that was a wonderful acknowledgement and support for that. Meredith Healey was assigned as our brilliant director.
Brilliant Meredith Healey was the director of New Works, the Wilbury Group. She was at Portland Stage the year after, but we love her, and she had a lot to do. I mean, I was happy to meet you, Gray, and always happy to put dates on the calendar, but Meredith really shepherded this project.
Meredith was amazing, and she did this incredible, we had the actors for a weekend, and she was pulling people for scene work. So it wasn't just a read through, it was really a performance by the time she finished with all of the work that she did as a director. And I mean, I just have my eye on her. I think she is going to be a real force in theater, you know, in your generation. So I just feel so lucky that, you know, we all were collaborating. We had this wonderful piano accompanist that Sammy found through a professor that she had at Brown.
That was Jennifer Holden.
And
Jen, we love you wherever you
yeah,
are.
I hope you're listening.
Yeah, Jen's birthday was like a day ago, and so happy birthday, Jen. Love you to death. I saw her last on my birthday. She came and got margaritas with me because she was in New York miraculously. It was quite the treat. And if anyone in Rhode Island needs an accompanist, by all means contact Jen Christina. That's her last name, Jen Christina. Okay. So
yeah. So it was just really terrific. And then we cast. Olivia Miller was cast as Garbo. She came out of the Brown Trinity Rep MA master's program, and Katrina Pavao, who you'll see in this video singing Ruth Harriet's part, I think was in her last semester at
Boston Conservatory.
Boston Conservatory, yep.
Boston Conservatory, where Amanda went.
It's actually funny. I went to Brown, so our two leads were representing our two.
It was a total dream team. It was a total dream team. And anyway, so Katrina just won a big award in Boston.
She just won an Elliot Norton Award for Best Supporting Actress for the role of Audrey in Little Shop of Horrors. Yeah, we're so proud of Katrina.
Yay, Katrina.
Yeah.
Yes.
She was terrific. So I guess, do you want to talk a little bit about just the lyrics before we cut to her tape, or do you want?
Sure, yeah. So this song is called Light and Shadow, and this is Ruth Harriet Louise, who's the photographer, her I Want song. And it's basically used in the story to convince her father to let her go. In this version of the script, it was to New York. In the new version of the script, it's to California. But basically this point is where her father says, no, I don't want you doing this anymore. And she says, no, I had this opportunity to go photograph a movie star, let me go. And her father says, well, you know, you're not a real artist. What is photography? This isn't real art. And so this is really Ruth Harriet trying to explain to him and express to him how photography is an art and science, and not easy to do the way that everyone thinks that is just by pressing a button. So we needed the lyric to express that. And what you'll see tonight is, as this musical has developed, we found different versions of this song. And the version of the song that you're going to see in the videos is not the version of the song that we have right now as we've revised the script. And we'll explain a little bit more about that as we go. But this first lyric, I really kind of took inspiration from Gray, what you had written on the page, and the beautiful poetic nature of it. And having someone have a passion, they will tend to explain things in such a poetic way, because you know that sensation of loving something so much and being so passionate about something, to be able to express that in song, that's really what we wanted to capture, especially with this version of the song. So
it's beautiful. Thank you, Sammy. Thanks for setting it up. So let's see it. Can we see it? So this is Katrina Pavao singing Light and Shadow at the reading at the Wilbury Group last January.
Why didn't you study painting?
I paint with light and shadow. I sculpt in dark blues. I sketch without a pencil, but through mists of silver hues. My mind is trained to see the photograph could be. My art is light and shadow, creation in my hand. Yes, I can freeze a moment, stop the hourglass stand, and time can melt away, fade back to yesterday. Take a look behind the subject's eyes. There's something there they can't disguise. There's pain or maybe sorrow, a longing for tomorrow. It's like surprise. I dream in light and shadow. My soul is black and white. My heart beats to the rhythm of the flash bulbs burning bright. I'm holding light and lens. To you it can't make sense. Look, Papa. Do you see the competing textures? The patterns, the contours?
You are overly exposed, Ruth Harriet.
Not overexposed. My lighting technique is disciplined.
That's not what I meant.
Oh, that's great. Thanks. Yeah, so that's Katrina singing Light and Shadow. That's Jeff Leatham playing her dad. That was such a great, wonderful reading. Thank you. Thanks for doing that. So tell us more. So how did this song evolve from there?
So that was half of the song. We're going to hear the second half of the original tune in just a few moments.
Okay.
But yeah, what we kind of wanted to root it in was honoring her culture and honoring kind of Jewish music. It's why I rooted it in C minor, and I kind of wanted that kind of feel initially. And then as we move into the second section of the song, we're trying to convince him to see what she sees and how she goes about making her art. And you'll hear in the music, it gets a little lighter, it gets a little bouncier, it gets a little fluffier when she gets into that portion. Is this the prompt? Do I ask you to play the second video?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. This is Jessica Fontana at the York Theatre. I'm singing at the NEO concert, the New Emerging Outstanding concert in 2019. So this is the second half of the song that you just heard.
Don't you see how I manipulate reality? Don't you see how it takes skill to get it right? To perpetuate the sinner's personality, I use tricks, I use science, I use light and shadow. Look at this, how I can highlight someone's attributes. Look at that, how I can hide a mole or scar. If the photograph can capture someone's stronger suits, they'll prove to the world who they are. I set the light in place where I can highlight someone's face or fix their skin or make them thin. If someone's pout is long, I'll set the shadow especially strong beneath their chin. And I begin. Click, 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 click. Praying that I get the shot I need. Oh, click, 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 click. And I'm basking in the glow of all the things I know as I'm creating art at shutter speed.
Awesome. Thank you. That was Jessica Fontana singing that at the NEO. And I'm sorry, Amanda, what is the NEO conference?
It's a new emerging outstanding. So it's a program that the York Theater in New York City has for new writers. And within that program, they get a feature and a concert at the York Theater. And they get a fully funded 29-hour staged reading of a show of their choice. So it's a pretty excellent award to win, and we were so grateful to win it. And coming attraction will eventually be the reading of choice, but in the times at hand, it is postponed. But honestly, to our benefit, because time is our best friend. Time is what makes me like a good Barolo, right? Like a really good Italian wine. Musicals mature and get better with a little, age. So
yeah, and we were so lucky to have Jessica sing that song. Jessica's an amazing performer who's appeared on Broadway, and that night was really, really special for us, especially because it was the first time Coming Attraction had been seen in New York City, and then the York to offer us to put on this reading of the show. It was actually supposed to be June 22nd of this year, and now who knows when it'll be. It will happen, but the York is an amazing off-Broadway theater. Desperate Measures started there, which then ended up running for a really long time off Broadway. Avenue Q, I think, had its first reading there. It's an incredible theater and has done some really amazing stuff. So we're so lucky to be partnered with them, and to be moving forward at some point, but we'll figure out when.
It will happen. That's great. But yeah, like Amanda says, you've got plenty of time to work on it. I'm curious, how do these experiences in developing a song or an entire musical, how do you make changes? How does it evolve? How does like this collaboration happen moving forward with, these development opportunities and stuff?
Sure. You get friends you trust, other professionals in the industry, and you get those words read out loud. You have to get ears on it. You need to get feedback, because you can look at something forever and ever and ever and think, oh, this is a good idea, or that's not a good idea, and change things on your own, but you're really not going to know unless you get some feedback. Mm-hmm. So we had an informal reading back in like September.
Yeah. So this is after the Wilbury reading.
Right. And after the Wilbury reading, we'd also gotten some feedback, and we'd also noticed things at the Wilbury, like, okay, this section is slow, or this moves too fast, or we can dive in a little more. This kind of just scratched the surface, and
or we don't need this character.
Right.
Killed off a few characters since the Wilbury reading.
We keep killing off characters.
We sure have. I remember there was a man in the audience that was very upset that Garbo didn't kiss Stiller, and I just want to inform him that he's no longer in the play.
No longer an option.
Sorry, buddy. Oh man.
Yeah, but it is.
There's always things you learn. Go ahead.
I think as we're lucky to have time, I think Lin-Manuel Miranda took 8 or 9 years to write Hamilton. Mm-hmm. And I think what is so precious about time is getting these different drafts and getting constant feedback. And feedback is tough because, to get feedback and criticism, you're like, oh my God, I've worked so hard, or I love this section. And it's saying like, okay, but like if 20 people have told us that this isn't working, it's so hard when it's your baby and you're so close to it, but to take that feedback is so essential, which is why we're so grateful to have had the reading at the York so early. We had only actually written half the songs at that point. And for you guys to let us do that that helped us so much, because the worst thing or the best thing is to, write the whole score and then someone's like, I hate all of it, start again. So to be able to have that halfway point at the Wilbury and have such a successful, wonderful reading with such amazing actors, amazing directors, to be able to do that was so important. And then by the time that draft turned into a full draft in September, we then made tons more changes and totally like blew everything apart and put it back together again. And we're still putting it together again. And now we have more time to really solidify everything. So
how does the story itself, I mean, you mentioned killing off characters, and like Gray, as the book writer, how does the arc of the entire story change throughout this process too?
Oh, yeah. It's really hard for me too, because it's steeped in a lot of history, and you have to sort of give yourself permission to just be a little more creative and let your imagination run wild and not be so adhere to history or, like Sammy just said, you fall in love with certain characters or certain scenes, certain bits of dialogue, and you have to let that go for the sake of the story. And what has happened is it's really Ruth Harriet's story. I mean, she's really the centerpiece. She's the heart of this. And she's also the woman that I think the audience will really identify with. And she's going through what women have always gone through in terms of trying to make her life choices. And she's a tragic heroine, which is, really poignant.
How so? Do you want to, or is that a spoiler or what? How is she a tragic heroine?
Because not every choice that a woman had was a good choice. And certainly because of the context of the times, Hollywood, the late 1920s, early 1930s, the upheaval of like the crash of 29, this really did impact women's lives in Hollywood. Women were an integral part of the studio system and had lots of different jobs during the silent film era. But when the crash happened, and for a number of different reasons, all of a sudden it just really became a territory for the men. And so Ruth Harriet's story really parallels that. She left the studio. She was, she was replaced by a man in 1929 on December 31st. So that tells you what you need to know. And that's what happened to so many women during that time. Garbo had the power and the clout to, remain and have an enduring career. But even that was really challenging because sound pictures were coming in. So all of this stuff is part of the fabric of the play. But to make the play really successful and to make the songs really come from a human place, it's all about the characters and how they kind of get through the story. And that's what you just are constantly focusing on.
Yeah, not to go too off, I don't want to go totally off script here, but I am a little curious, Gray. So as the great grandniece of Greta Garbo, you set out to write a story about Greta Garbo, it sounds like, and then it sort of along the way, it seems like Ruth Harriet has sort of become the focus of this story. And I just wonder how you feel about that, or could you talk a little more about how that shift happened for you?
Well, I think they're both very central characters and they have a real relationship in the story. But what I set out to do was to tell the story of early Hollywood and how these women in early Hollywood impacted on a global and really significant level. Because these films were shown throughout the world, there was not the sort of language barrier of like a published book that had to be translated. Everybody could go and enjoy these films. If you're in some small little town that had never, you saw things for the first time, and everybody around the world was seeing these women in Hollywood films, and Garbo was so dramatically different and unique. So that's the story I really wanted to tell. And the way to tell that story, the way I could tell that story rather than just like a biopic, which was to tell the story of a relationship of two women. To me, that was my in to telling to talking about that era and how it really seeded what women's experiences are now. So
that's so interesting. It's so interesting to hear about how the whole process evolves. So thanks for sharing that. And this song, especially Light and Shadow, it sounds like the evolution of this song is also just like the evolution of an entire musical in a microcosm. So how is that song sort of evolved?
Yeah, in a lot of ways. So what what we had noticed at the Wilbury and at our informal table reading in September was that it was a little disjointed. The two different sections of the song felt a little too different. And there was something that was just a little static about it. And we're like, we can fix this. We know how to do this, right? How do we activate this idea? How do we actively get her to convince her father that it's a worthwhile thing for her to go to Los Angeles and pursue her career? And we changed it in a few ways. Sammy, I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, sure. So I think what we're always aiming to do as writers is to use songs to both obviously be pleasing songs to listen to, but also to really move the plot forward and to really have a purpose in the plot, and to basically take what the dialogue would be of a scene and then kind of insert a song in there to collapse the dialogue, and therefore allow the plot to move throughout the song. So we felt that this song didn't necessarily do the job of convincing in the way that we wanted to. And we really wanted to show her joy and her excitement and her passion. And we felt that because the song was sort of just on a level like this the whole time, it didn't necessarily show that explosive excitement that photography brings Ruth Harriet. So we wanted to bring a little bit more lightness into it. Also, she's 22 years old, right? Like, what is this?
Sounded old, right?
Yeah.
And Alan Menken actually once said, music is a lie detector test. And that's really interesting to me because, lyrics, a character can be saying whatever they want to say, but the music is the subtext behind it. The music is what they're really feeling deep inside, no matter what words they're saying. So we really wanted to add a little bit more of that, and add the convincing element and kind of make it more of a back and forth with her father within the song. Is there anything else we need to add before we?
And just generally speaking, when you're developing songs for characters, right? You're also developing, it's usually in their I Want song or in the main song that they sing, it becomes their kind of marker, their musical theme throughout the show, right? So these musical themes come back. You hear them again and again. In the greatest musicals, these things happen, they're represented by certain instruments. And we really wanted to just zero in on what does she sound like? Like, if I had to pick one instrument in the plethora of instruments, what would represent her? What does her melody sound like? What is hopeful? What is joyous? What is curious? And really kind of diluting it, right? It's writing a good song is diluting all of the ideas into as few notes and as few words as possible for you to get your point across. So it's kind of, trimming fat in some ways, but also specifying. And that's why, we're lucky that we have the time to do this. We're not putting it up on Broadway tomorrow. Mm-hmm. So it's really been excellent to have the time to steep in all of those questions and really curate something that's a little more on the nose, I think.
Great.
I also think it's important to say that when you wrote Light and Shadow, that was, back in October 2019, and you hadn't written the rest of the songs in the
right.
You know where the musical line was going to go with that character. And so now, like you said, time is your friend, and perspective as well. So
that's completely true. Yeah, I mean, you have the time to take all of these bits and pieces, like what does Garbo sound like? What does Ruth Harriet sound like? What does Irving, her boyfriend, sound like? What do all these people sound like, and how do they intertwine and weave through this entire musical score? And really taking time to curate that is a joy, is a real joy. So yes, time, we love time.
So Amanda, will you play us your the new rendition that you and Sammy have just?
Yes, I'd be delighted to. So let me just set this up here. Okay. So it starts in around the same place, right? So, the rabbi says, pushing a button, like, what does this take? And she's just so frustrated because he's not listening to her. So Why do you always ask, though you know the answer? Why won't you ever stop and look me straight in the eye? Then you might start to see the artist inside of me. Please, Papa, please try. And then he goes, you want to be an artist, then why don't you study painting? She answers, I paint with light and shadow. I sculpt in darkened rooms. I sketch without a pencil, but with mists of silver fumes. My mind is trained to see the photograph could be. My art is light and shadow, creation in my hand. Yes, I can freeze the moments of the hourglass's sand, and time can melt away, fade back to yesterday. Take a look behind the subject's eyes. There's something there they can't disguise, what they're longing to reveal, what they're even scared to feel. I dream in light and shadow, my soul is black and white, my heart beats to the rhythm of the flash bulbs burning bright. I'm all behind the lens, does that make sense? And it's like, she's like, look, Papa, can't you just see the competing textures? And he's like, you're overly exposed. Not listening to me. I'm not overexposed. My lighting technique is disciplined. That's not what I meant. When will you understand this takes talent to do? Please, Papa, let me photograph you. He's like, well, okay, right? So go sit over there, okay? And then let's put the key light here on your face, and we'll highlight your sturdy chin. Shake to the left, now hold it in place, so the glue settles on your skin. Then when the moment's frozen in space, we can see who you are within. Let's begin. And suddenly I see it. There's something in his eyes, a glimmer of belief in me. His stoic look betrays. There's a smile, small but true, and I know he sees it too. I live in light and shadow, the space that's in between. Oh, I'm creating magic, tell me how is that obscene? God, he gave me sight, and I can't ignore. I'm meant for more. I was born to share his light.
It's really beautiful.
So that's the new version of the song. So you'll see it's a little different. The original starts, da 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 da. The new version starts a little more suspense, right? I dream in light and shadow. I sculpt in darkened rooms. Right? It's holding more.
Yeah.
You don't know where it's gonna go, right? The first felt a little too settled in what she was gonna say, and this feels a little more like we don't know where she's gonna go with this.
I love that. The tension, yeah, it's
right.
great. Yeah,
the tension build, and then having the moments of action, right? So like physical action for the actor to do on stage, we wrote a really beautiful standalone song before, but in terms of it being actionable, it wasn't the most practical thing. So like, how do we make it active? She has to show him because she's going to photograph him. And then we made it a game. So there you have activation, you kind of have the lightness, you have the playfulness, and you have a youthful kind of sound that comes with all of these things. I don't know if I'm missing anything.
Yeah, and the goal of the song was to convince him, right? And I think it was Amanda's brilliant idea. That's like, what's better to convince him than to photograph him and to have him kind of be in that space and see what she sees in that moment. And that was really important to us, that we really wanted then by the end of that song, he's convinced, right? Like the song has done the work for us that, you know, a big convincing monologue would do. And that's really what we wanted to get by the end of the song of like, okay, like he knows that she has to go. Because this really means a lot to her. And so we're excited about this version of the song. And again, like it could change because this is so new. There's not even dialogue written in the middle yet. Like we've truly just kind of released this song into the world. So it's really fun to premiere it here with you guys. And it could change again, but we're excited about the direction that it's going.
Exactly. And even one more tidbit just about like there's a lot of remnants that will stay from the original version, but it's definitely like a facelift, right? So also with the theme of light and shadow, the words are right there, right? So the new melody is da 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 da, but who's to say that the orchestrations behind that melody can't be the former? You know what I mean? They could still exist and kind of give the lightness and the darkness and kind of marry the two.
Mm-hmm.
So
another fun fact too is that the Suddenly I See It part that Amanda played is actually something that comes later in the show, and something that we wouldn't have known had we, you know, when we wrote the song the first time. That's actually what ends up happening between our first section. That song, Electricity, is sort of their big song at the beginning of the first act, and we wanted to sort of mirror those two sections of, you know, that vision that she has when she photographs. You can really see inside someone's soul, and then that part of that melody, that little chunk, becomes a full song later on in the first act.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little pre-prize and you don't even know it.
Well, this is great. This is so illuminating, guys. Thank you so much. I want to be conscious of your time. I really appreciate all the time and the knowledge that you're sharing with us. I'd love to hear a little bit more about where it goes from here. I know you mentioned the NEO workshop coming up. But what else? Like, what's the process look like from here on out and next steps?
Well,
Yeah.
many a thing. In pre-COVID times, right? It's reading. You invite the people that have opinions and the people that have money and space, and you know, you get those people involved and you get the right people attached. And then there's other direction of, you know, submitting for every possible opportunity. All of the grants, all of the development processes, there's a plethora of them, but they are limited. So it really is just kind of like throwing your, you know, I'm not finding my words. Sammy, help me out here.
Yeah. And we've done that and with some degree of success. So that's Tell
us about that success. I mean, the Eugene O'Neill Center is semi-finalist. Is that right?
Yes.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Congratulations. Yeah. I mean, that's not a small accomplishment. So congratulations.
Yeah, and we're excited. And what's so amazing about that too is that this show is still, you know, 2 years in its infant stages. And so as we develop it further, we're hoping, you know, to bring this again to people's eyes and to get those. And we're so excited to keep working on it. And that's what's been so thrilling about this is the show that we premiered at the Wilbury has the same soul, but is different from the show that exists now. And it's finding that and getting really smart people's opinions to tell us kind of how they feel it should be developed further. So it's, again, just about surrounding yourself with the right people.
Yeah.
They have the same vision as you, and not just people that, you know, want to put their own spin or thoughts on it. Like that's important to really curate a team that all has the same vision and can respect what you're trying to do. And this really is a women's project and a women's show, and talking about the journey of women. And in my ideal world, we'd have a fully, you know, full team of women, putting this up in, any theater anywhere, producers, set designers, MDs, musicians. I think it would just really do the whole project some justice, if that were the case. Dreams. Yeah.
Hades, is that what Hades, was it Hades Town this year or this past year? That was the first Broadway musical with an all-female creative team.
Yeah.
So it's possible for sure. Getting there. Well, this is terrific. I really appreciate your time. Thank you, Sammy.
Well,
Amanda,
and Josh, we
Gray.
really appreciate the sort of green light that you gave us. That was such a huge opportunity for us. And it gave us sort of a goal, which is always necessary. And then it got Sammy back to Providence.
I'm so happy. Oh my gosh, eating all the food that I used to eat. No, it's the best. I used to go to the Wilbury when I was an undergrad at Brown, and I just love the stuff that you guys do. You have such an amazing program and put up such quality work. And we're so grateful to have been a part of it in some small way.
Yeah, and I think it really shows how, you all are sort of like providing the green shoots for theater in America. This is where people can come together, try something out, hopefully thrive, and see where you can plant it.
Spear some local talent. Like, let's not forget about that too.
Yeah.
Like,
Everyone was amazing. Everyone was so good.
We love new friends. Like, what a treat. What an actual lovely experience to get to work with people that you wouldn't get to know otherwise. So thank you for that. Thank you for that opportunity.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for sharing your work with us. You just keep us in mind when those royalty checks start coming in, okay, guys?
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks again for sharing this with us, Sammy Hornoff, Gray Horan, and Amanda Darkangelis.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Woo!
All right.
Okay, thank you to Go Local Prov again. Thanks for supporting the streaming program, and thank you to our audience and our supporters. If you'd like to make a gift to support us at this challenging time, you can visit thewilburygroup.org/support. Thanks again. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.